Hey everybody, I'm John. This is Seth. We're the John Ferrara Seth Moutal duo, and we're gonna be playing some songs for our upcoming album, Frail Things in Sharp Places. It's coming out on Wednesday, and yeah, a little sneak peek action. Let me see if there's any questions that you guys might have. Let's see, nothing yet. Cool. Well, I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing here. So we're two people, obviously, and what we try to do is fill in as much sound as we can. So what I'm doing is I'm looping, playing bass, looping, and I have, you can't see them here, but I have these foot pedals here that are like, it's like a Moog Taurus, but 2-octave version of one and a homemade version. It's got a lot of cool sounds. I kind of play bass lines with that while I'm doing more like piano or guitarish things via tapping on the bass itself. Seth plays drum set and tabla often at the same time somehow. And he also plays various different hand drums, which we won't be doing today, but we try to fill a pretty wide spectrum of sound with between the two of us. So maybe we'll do one more, and we'll see if some comments come in. Thank you guys for tuning in. Oh, and also the last song was called "A Unique Sense of How Things Can Go Wrong," and this next one is called "Song for Ramita." Cool. Thank you guys again for tuning in. We're the John Ferrara and Seth Moutal duo, and that song was called Song for Amita. And what we were doing here is playing some songs for our upcoming album, Frail Things in Sharp Places, that comes out on Wednesday. And let's see if there's any questions. Where do you get your inspiration for creating this music? Good question, Norma. All sorts of places, actually. One thing that Seth and I bond over is that we have a lot of similar interests, rock, classical, jazz, pretty much all over the map with the music that we like. So when we create, we try not to think in terms of like strategies or anything like that. It's more what resonates with us and what kinds of, songs and moods kind of make sense, So the inspiration is kind of from that. It's also just from, I don't know, life itself, or the things that we that inspire us. Good people, friends, things like that. Yeah. Let's see what else. Do you tend to write in odd meters more or simply play across the bar more? Kind of a little of both. You want to take some of that?
Yeah, almost fully both.
Yeah.
I would say, it seems to me a lot of when John's, I'd say like probably 75% of the time, it seems that when you write an odd meter, it's like the time's resetting more than kind of playing over. But then everything you play is so violently syncopated that it's doing that anyway. And we've both studied a lot of Indian music. I guess that answers both questions. That is more about playing over a bar line and laying polyrhythms and tahais and things like that over. So there's a decent balance there.
Yeah. And when I'm trying to think of when I'm putting together a composition, I'm not necessarily thinking in terms of odd times. I'm just trying to think of like what sounds good. Like what let the ideas flow. One interesting thing that I think Westerners have when it comes to odd times is it has a stigma of being sort of like inherently complicated. It's almost like a rite of passage if you can play that Dream Theater riff or something like that. But from studying music from other cultures, Indian music, Turkish music, Balkan, their sense of odd times isn't really odd. It's not really weird. It's just that's what the music is, so they're used to it. And if you submerge yourself in that kind of music, listening to it a lot and playing it and going the extra mile, and even trying to write riffs like that, that's kind of how like odd times really start making sense. I think like they're not just abstract; it's more like embedded in you at that point. So, we'll take another question. What main pedals do you utilize? That's a good question, Craig. I use a bunch of them. As I said before, I use these MIDI Taurus pedals, and that's kind of how I play bass in this project. I do a lot of the tapping stuff here. That's more like piano or guitarish sort of stuff. So, kind of the biggest real estate I have over here is the Moog Taurus pedals. As far as like my more formal pedal board, I have a B7K Ultra from Darkglass, which is kind of like, I don't know, one of the coolest pedals ever. It's a great one. I got a Pog 2. I have two separate Super Octave OC3s. I have an Avalanche Run. I have all sorts of stuff. Two really cool ones that I have. One is I have an X-Tom pedal from Hawtone, which it's one of those pedals where you can sort of just upload a sound to it, and then it becomes whatever you want. Right now I have it set as a ring mod. Which is a really cool one. I'm also using the Hartke chorus pedal, which I use for some lead sounds and just for some ambiance, and one of the songs that we'll do later on. All right. It's a really, really, really good chorus. I use that on a couple different tracks. So yeah, that's kind of the cool. Cool. All right, play another one.
Sure.
Cool. You want to start this one off? Cool. All right. That was called 30 Tyrants. We did a video of that a little bit ago. And we're the Ferrara Seth Moutal duo, for those of you just tuning in. And these are all songs from our upcoming album called Frail Things in Sharp Places. And big thanks to Hartke and Samson for having us and hosting this. This is awesome. Having a lot of fun. Yeah. Let's see if there's anything we can, any questions here or anything. Thanks, Evan. Okay, Steven, how did you two end up starting this project? And yep, I'm totally still making music with Consider. We just got out of the studio recording our new album. It's going to come out probably in the fall. We'll make an official announcement of that soon. So we're still going very strong. And yeah, this is just sort of a side venture. And Seth and I met, well, I guess maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, but we started playing together about a year ago. I had a lot of songs that didn't really fit the mold of Consider the Source, and wanted to do something with them. So I wasn't sure if they should be like solo pieces or if they should be something more. But I've always connected with drummers first and foremost. So when I saw Seth playing at an open mic in town, I was like, "This dude shreds, man! This is awesome." And when I started thinking seriously about doing a side thing, he was the first person I thought of. And, you know, sometimes you just have a feeling that something's going to work out. And I was like, this dude's awesome. We're going to play, and it's going to be great. And it totally was. So we had a couple of jams, worked on some things. And then over time, the songs really started to take form. And, yeah, it started becoming more of a legit project. So, and now we're doing some touring. We're putting out an album. And it's kind of progressed in a really cool way. So, yeah.
It's funny, I guess... a couple years before we started playing, in fact, right before Jeff started playing with you, like right when he started playing with you, Jeff's a friend of mine for a lot of years, and we played drums together, and I love him. And but anyhow, like there's this other guy that like was at my house, and like his ringtone came on, and it was a Consider the Source song, and it was awesome. It was like it was nasty. I was like, what the fuck is that? That is awesome. Oops, sorry, F-bomb. What is that? And he was like, this is an awesome band, and you would love it, because, like, you're crazy, polyrhythmic, you know, that kind of guy. And I was like, yeah, man, that's when are they playing? And he's like, they just lost their drummer. You got to go try out, he says to me. I was like, yeah, man. And I was like, when's the tryouts? He's like, tonight. I was like, I got a gig on Long Island tonight. So it was like that. And then I heard that Jeff got the gig, and I was like, awesome, you know, like that's going to be great. And it is great and has been great. And it's so from then on, you were visible to me through that. And like every time I heard your band, I was like, that bass player is retarded. What is he doing? And so, yeah, you know, like fast forward 5 years later, you were like, hey, man, I got some songs. I was like, yeah, totally. Absolutely. And it's been really fun and challenging, and an excellent vehicle, I think, for both of our own weird stuff that doesn't work with other things in a way, you know? Yeah.
Hey, Jay. What model amp and cab are you using? I'm using the TX600 and the HyDrive 410s. This has been pretty much my rig for this project since the beginning, and I've actually been playing Hartke since I was about 16 or so. And the cool thing is my sound sort of developed with it. I think every project that I've been in since I was maybe, like 16 or 17 has been some form of Hartke rig. For this project, this just, I don't know, it just absolutely works. It gives me like the highs for the tapping stuff. Like for example, just hitting tapping alone without any looping or chorus pedals. You know, it just really pops out, really more than any other amp that I've played through. It handles the lows great, it handles the highs great. For this kind of almost more like lead bass kind of stuff, it's one of the amps that could do all of it. It can do that sort of thing, and it could also do a more, you know, supportive role. So yeah. Hey Kristen, when you're writing, do you to communicate the emotion that you're trying to convey in each song? Mm-hmm. Feels. Yeah, you know, one thing that's really important to us as players and as people is that the music that we put forth, the stuff that we write, the stuff that we improvise is authentic to us and not gratuitous. We are into a lot of kind of crazy out there music that might be interpreted as sometimes gratuitous and just, you know, cerebral musician-y, jazz fusion-y kind of stuff. But when we get together, we try to, you know, shed ego as much as we can and just play from the heart. And the compositions are born from that. The compositions aren't born from, oh, that's just a cool riff. It's like, oh, this thing is happening in my life. How do I convey that in a piece of music? It's something I feel is really important and is lacking in a lot of music. You know, that sort of, you know, whatever the genre is. You know, if it's pop music, if it's jazz fusion, if it's prog, if it's electronic music, whatever it is, you know, just something that's, you know, authentic to the artist and not just gratuitous. So
I heard a great quote once that you remind me of, and I agree completely, John. But I think somebody was interviewing Duke Ellington or something like that. I'm not exactly sure who it was, but I think it was Duke Ellington. And the interviewer was kind of a straight guy that was not that interesting. And he says to him, "What is great music? You know, how do you define great music?" And the guy, you know, he looked at him kind of like he was a jive turkey. He looked him up and down like, "Come on, man." And he said to him, "In music, I hear no good and bad, only true and false." And I think that's a good thing to live by because, I mean, if you're being true to yourself and really honest, then it can't really be bad, I don't think, you know? And if you're not, then it has to be.
It's awesome. Cool. We're going to play another song. It's called When Will Then Be Now. Yeah, it's a Spaceballs reference. All right, thank you guys for tuning in. We're the John Ferrara and Seth Moutal duo. And the last song was called When Will Then Be Now. So let me just check the screen real quick. Most difficult element of your setup to get right at various venues. Oh, man. Well, yeah, part of it's the balance between, for me at least, it's the balance between the Taurus pedals and my main signal. Actually, the looping too. There are 3 different volumes and 3 different sounds, and even if you keep the same settings on all of them, the it's kind of depending on your sound guy, depending on the room, and if it's a bass heavier room or a brighter room. So every night, I mean, like anything, you got to just make sure you check every aspect of your sound, and also know how to play enough rooms and know how to combat those situations where, maybe the room is like super boomy or super bassy. Knowing how to like cut your frequency in a certain way to make sure that all that stuff everything has its own place. Yeah, that's it's a good question and something that's very hard to navigate. Should we do? Want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, the hardest part for me is hearing the loop usually.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, a loop doesn't necessarily breathe like a human, so you got to really treat it as such. And, if there's any pushes or pulls in the loop, you have to repeat them every time. So that's the hard part.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Do Jackie Chan? Sure. Cool. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. We're going to do one more song, and if there's any questions afterwards, we'll be happy to answer them. But thank you all for tuning in. We're the Ferrara Seth Moutal duo, and yeah, Jackie Chan. You guys are awesome. Thank you. Big thanks again to Hartke and Samson for having us. So one interesting element here is to tune the tablas, you need a hammer. And it's not uncommon in Indian classical music when you go to a concert and you have a tabla player playing this beautiful piece of music. Everyone is playing such beautiful, heartfelt stuff. And then the tabla player takes out a hammer and just starts beating the hell out of his this amazing instrument. It is. It'll be worth it, though. You'll see. It's a very temperamental instrument, tuning-wise. Yeah. Put some auto-tune on it. I've actually gotten so used to it. Sounds good. Thank you all for bearing with us. Cool. That was Jackie Chan. Because why not name a song after the coolest dude that's ever lived, right? So, yeah, let's see if we have any questions here. Tuning just sounds like... How did the project blossom? Well, we touched on it a little bit before. I met Seth in town, and he's a awesome drummer. I saw him play at an open mic night, and he absolutely crushed it. It was funny. It was like a Led Zeppelin song or something, and he was like killing it on it. You know, it was like, and yeah. And then when I decided to do this project, I was thinking about a drummer, and he's the first person I thought of. It was like, that dude, something with him, something about him. I want to, you know, get together and play, and it was like instant connection. It was really great. Let's see, Craig. Have you ever experimented with a fretless? I have, man, but I'm not great at it. I want to give it another try because it was years ago before my ear was more fine-tuned. My other project, Consider the Source, Gabriel, the guitarist, plays a fretless, and listening to him play for years has gotten my my ear a little bit more, definitely not perfect pitch, but a lot better. So maybe I'll give it another try at some point soon. And also, what are your main influences as far as the tapping? Well, it's funny. When I'm thinking in terms of tapping, I'm thinking more like a piano player or a guitarist or something like that. Not so much like a bass player. So I don't really turn to bass players for inspiration. I listen to like jazz players like Brad Meldau or Chick Corea. For some minimalist stuff like Philip Glass, Steve Reich, and things like that are really heavy on the piano. And it's really cool when you have a 5-string bass, especially tuned with a high C, how much you can explore kind of that realm of music. The bass is definitely an instrument that can serve a lot of different functions, and that's one of the things that drew me to playing in the first place was the excitement of that kind of exploration. So yeah, my tapping inspirations is more from that realm rather than like bass player so much. Stephen Life Saverson said very David King-ish. Bad Plus. Oh yeah.
Oh, he's a badass. I appreciate the compliment.
Yeah, just saw the Bad Plus last week. It was incredible. They're my favorite band in the world.
I don't listen to him a lot, but I think we have very similar influences and loves of similar things. So the few times I've heard his playing, I was like, hell yeah, that's what you're supposed to sound like, man.
Yeah, man.
I did see his podcast a few times, and it's hilarious and brilliant. And yeah, everything John's played me was like epic. So thank you for that compliment.
What's your favorite Discovery use of El Toro 2?
El Toro Dos.
El Toro Dos is my my MIDI foot pedals. I mean, I don't know. As far as like Discovery, the idea was born first from actually the first experience I ever had with a Taurus pedal was with a Consider the Source recording, and the engineer that we were working with had an idea to beef up one of the sounds with just reinforcing the low notes with them. And ever since then, I was in love with the idea of using it. And so years and years later, fast forward, I had a guy named John Olson build me El Toro, the first one. And it was 1 octave, just like a Moog Taurus. And then I got a little, I don't know, experimental on it. And the one I have now is actually 2 octaves. And not only is it 2 octaves, but you can switch the octaves. So like here's like my lowest note, right? So if I click a button, that goes even lower. If I click the other button, it gets higher. If I click it again, it gets higher. I guess that's it. All in all, it covers about 7 or 8 octaves. And this is kind of a new toy, so I haven't gotten to use it that much as far as the other octaves, but yeah.
So I just want to talk for a second about the microphones I'm using. Samson is nice enough to let us use these beautiful microphones. I got the Q72s on my toms, and my snare drum, and on my tabla, which is quite impressive that they have that broad a range of frequency that they can cover all those drums, with one kind of mic. It's all part of the DK707 drum pack, which you can get very easily, and it's phenomenal. It includes 4 of these microphones, so that would cover like any 5-piece kit you have, like tom, snare, bass drum. It's giving you 2 condenser mic overheads, which are excellent and going to give you some great sounds. So I'm happy that they are letting us use them and getting us good sound, and I hope they continue to. Also, right here, we're talking to you into their microphones as well. Right. This is thank you, the Q8x is a wonderful vocal microphone. Also, you can use it for some instruments. I'll be using it for frame drums and things like that. So you can't do better.
All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. We're the John Ferrara Seth Moutal duo. We have an album coming out on Wednesday called Frail Things in Sharp Places. If you're interested, you could check it out at johnferraramusic.bandcamp.com. big thanks to Hartke and Samson for hosting us. You guys are too good to us. We really appreciate it. And thank you all for tuning in. Thanks.